Oh, hello. Welcome to today's video. Today we're going to talk about painting the kill team into the dark terrain. Now this is the same terrain whether you've bought Into the Dark, or whether you've bought Soul Shackle, or whether you've purchased the other one whose name briefly escapes me, Shadow Vaults. It's the same terrain. We'll look at how to paint it without it costing you about a year of your life. So this is my own painted terrain here. This is one set of it, and this is layout 1 from the competitive pack. So if you like the way this is painted, this is the result that I'm trying to guide you towards. Now, in terms of preparing the kit for painting, if you check out on my channel, there is a video called Review Part 1. I guess this is Review Part 2, where I build the stuff and I talk about using masking tape. I got some kind of posh Tamiya masking tape to mask off all the points where the terrain actually comes together. Now, as a negative of having done it that way, you'll notice, if you look where the laser pointer is now, this top surface of the pillar, where the cap goes down, this is actually bare plastic, because the tops of these were masked off. So you'll notice around the tops of all my pillars, you can see a little bit of bare plastic peeking out. If that's going to bother you, then perhaps this method, you might have to go back and put a very thin coat of black paint on there. But I find with the colours that I've used, the little bits of bare plastic actually don't bother me too much. So the whole principle behind how to paint this way is you're trying to paint it so that it looks good enough to not to kind of ruin the experience, but also you're not painting so much of it that you lavish as much time on it as you would lavish on actual miniatures, and it doesn't steal the thunder from the miniatures that are playing on the battlefield, right? It kind of blends into the background. So here's the method. First thing is you do a Chaos Black spray. It's not called Chaos Black anymore. A black spray of your choice. I actually use Colour Forged Black, but you do a black spray all over, and then you do a really heavy dry brush of your primary colour. So for my primary, when I talk about really heavy dry brush, right, I'm talking about like this brush here, right? So this is a Citadel Scenery brush, really stiff. You probably buy a similar thing in like B&Q or whatever the equivalent is in America, like a hardware store. What do you call it over there, like Lowe's or something? I don't know. But like this is a big, stiff, bristled brush, not really useful for anything else apart from dry brushing terrain. And then you're going to do a really heavy dry brush of your primary colour. I chose Lead Belcher, right? And that's going to get the primary colour on and leave a shadow. Now, I know the way we've all been taught to paint is to use washes. I really don't advise using washes on terrain. You're going to slop null all over a huge thing which then doesn't have a base. It's going to pool everywhere. It's going to drip everywhere. It's going to get really sticky and tacky. It's going to take about a day and a half to dry properly, and you're going to have to sit there with it for like 90 minutes while it's drying, dabbing away all the black that's pooling too heavily down the bottom. So just use a dry brushing approach and you get a nice shadow really, really quickly. Once you have dry brush on your main colour, in my case Lead Belcher, it's then a case of literally going around and painting in a single flat colour as much detail as you can be bothered, right? So I did a pass in red, so I did all that, not the lights, I know you can see red lights, but I did like all the handles in red on the doors and things, because I thought they should be red, and I did like the eyes on the servo skulls that you can just about see in red. Not very much red. The wheel on this door here is red, okay? I did some ruler brass, so there's some brass detail here, this little round thing, and a couple of these little archways. Just a couple of little metallic details picked out in brass as well. Sort of some pipe up here, and the plate up here, and the pipes here. Picked those out in brass. A shabty bone, so this thing is covered in skulls, so all the skulls got base coated as shabty bone. Mordian Blue, which is an old foundation paint. I always use as many foundation paints in my terrain builds as I possibly can, because I'm trying to use them up, right? It was a range of paints Games Workshop did about over 10 years ago now that I just still have. So all the sort of cabling across the top was done with Mordian Blue, and then Narlock Green. I don't actually know if you can see any in this picture, but there's a couple of like dead monitor screens, so there's like you can just about see one around the corner here. I put Narlock Green on there. once you've done that, so you've done your black undercoat, you've done your primary colour heavy dry brush, you've done your sort of base coat of as many details as you can be bothered with, you're then going to give everything, the whole thing, a dry brush of Screaming Skull, right? A normal light, as you would to dry brush anything else, you're going to get all a dry brush of Screaming Skull, and that's what gives it all this highlight. So the whole thing is highlighted with Screaming Skull, and what you learn by doing this basically is that Screaming Skull can highlight any colour, right? So this was a technique taught to me by one of the guys that paints all the terrain for Warhammer World, for not for the displays, but for tournaments and things like that. You just dry brush everything with Screaming Skull. It gives everything this kind of highlighted look. Somebody on the Discord actually commented that it looked like it was non-metallic metals. It does take a little bit of the sheen off the lead belcher, but it makes it look maybe a little bit more stone adjacent. It does look a bit shiny in real life though. But I think it's good. I think for the amount of time expended using Screaming Skull as an omni highlight for the whole thing, really, really good, right? Then we get into the next hack. So the first hack was not using washes, it was using old school dry brushes over black. The second hack is highlighting everything with Screaming Skull with a dry brush. The third hack is what I call filth wash. What you're going to have to do is you're going to go and buy yourself a pot of Lamahan Medium from Games Workshop. And then you're going to get like a big chunky brush. I'm thinking I've got a number 5 brush here. So one of these, and you're going to do like 5 big brushfuls of Mornfang Brown, right? No, sorry, 3 brushfuls of Mornfang Brown, and literally you're going to wash your brush off with the brush load of Mornfang on it. You're going to wash your brush off in the Lamahan Medium, scrape the brush off your side, get the paint in there, close the pot, give it a big shake, or if you've got one, a zhuzh on your vortex mixer, and then you've got yourself what I call filth wash. It's going to be like this extremely runny brown paint with a bit of sediment in it, and you want to get that sediment paint into suspension, basically. And then what you can do is just daub that stuff anywhere where you have where dirt will collect. And that's what all this brown is down here. All this brown is on there. You can see it all over the model. Brown up here at the top of the door. Brown all down here. Brown all around here. Brown all around here. Brown on this bit of pipe here. Brown here. Brown here. Brown here. All brown around here. All this brown around here. All this brown over here. There's loads of it all over the model. And what this does is it will look kind of shocking when you first put it on. And then it dries back and it retards back. And it leaves, and it really looks like it's just dirt and stuff in the crevices, and it gives you an effect which, I wouldn't want to use on a really finely detailed model because it does create like quite a thick area of paint in some places, which could obscure detail. But on terrain like this, it's really quick, it's really effective. Some people are going to really balk at the idea of wasting an entire pot of Lamahan Medium. If this was a product that was priced the same as the Lamahan Medium that I was telling you to go out and buy, you'd probably not have that worry that you're buying a whole product just for one thing. Because you're making some weird thing, it feels more wasteful. But like I've done this before. I do this on all my terrain. My pot of it's nearly empty now. You can see that's it there. But I finished it off on this terrain, really. From the last time I mixed one up to do a previous piece of terrain. So, it doesn't go off, keep it. You will have to zhuzh it up again to get those paint particles back in suspension. But, that's filth wash, really, really good. Right, and then you're done. And then, because this terrain kit has lights, I decided to go back and paint out all the lights with Wraithbone. And then I did some red lights, so you can see all the little red lights here. That's just Blood Angels red contrast paint. The yellow lights are and in yellow contrast paint, and the sort of lightning-y blue bits here is good old Aethermatic blue contrast paint. And yeah, that just looks fine. It looks much more brighter than the rest of the terrain piece. It gives you the kind of idea that there's some light there. There are different ways you could do it. You could do more of a dry brush to get more kind of an object source lighting effect where the light is going out. I've seen some really effective versions of painting this where they do the whole thing quite dark and then they just do coloured dry brushes around the lights. That works really well as well. And I'm sure you can do all kinds of stuff with an airbrush as well, but I don't have that kit, so this is what I've done, and for me and for my miniatures, I think this works really, really well. So, yeah, there's my quick guide to painting the close quarters confines, the Gallo Dark Terrain, the Into the Dark Terrain, whatever we're calling it, without going mad. So to sum up, I am definitely content with my painting style. If you go on the Discord, by the way, links in the description, you can see some more pictures, you can zoom right in, and you can find loads and loads of flaws. There are absolutely flaws with this method, absolutely I could paint it better, but you don't want to spend so much, like, if you want to know how you can paint this really well, go on to Warhammer TV. They've got a Warhammer TV video about painting this terrain, and if you paint it in that fashion, I promise you'll start now, you'll be lucky to be done by the end of the year, okay? But if you want to paint it to a high standard, you certainly can. But for me, this is the best kind of locus between speed and result, right? I'm looking forward to getting my first game in on this. I haven't checked with Zimbad yet, but I think he's coming out on Friday. We're going to have a game on Into the Dark, so that should be really, really cool. I know people will be asking how to put it together, so because, once again, to remind you, I masked off all the contact points. If you don't know what I mean by that, go and look at my other video on the channel, the Gallo Dark Terrain Review Part 1, something like that, and it will show you what I mean by masking off all the little connection points. Putting it together was not physically difficult at all. No problems. It went together. It stayed together. Now, it did take longer than I would like, because it is kind of like doing a jigsaw with the trying to follow the plans and not always realising, especially when you've got a straight wall with pillars, which way round that wall has to be, because the pillars are cut on the diagonal, and it depends on what's coming along to mate with that piece of wall and which direction that's going on as to which way round that wall needs to be. But I think it's one of these things where if you play lots of Into the Dark, you'll get faster at that bit. And what I did do was I wrote the A1, A2, A3, B1, B2, B3 on the bottom of all the pieces as well with a gold Sharpie. So, yeah, but I had no physical problems. Now, that's not saying that people... I'm not trying to gaslight the people who are having physical problems putting this together. I've had 2 separate reports from people that they've had extreme difficulty getting their kit together. And this is an unpainted, naked kit as well. This is not like, oh, they haven't masked it off and they've got it all thick with paint. Like, I've heard of people really, really having to forcefully put the kit together. For whatever reason, I've just been lucky. I don't know. It must just be a case that some of the machines for that initial print run were not set up properly somehow, and the taper is not quite there on the various pieces that I have to slot together. Now, I did have a slight problem when I put this together. It kind of bowed upwards, so the edges were slightly off the board. A big thing to do if your thing doesn't seem to be sitting flat, turn it upside down and check the bottom of your pillars are all connected properly where the pillars connect together. That's what I'd missed out. So it was all connected from the top. Turn the whole thing upside down and just clip the pillars together at the bottom, and then the whole thing kind of flattened back out. But apart from that, no real problems for me. But like I say, the difficulty is real. I'd be interested in hearing in the comments, just as a sort of straw poll, if you have assembled your Into the Dark, do you struggle to put it together? Yes or no? And if you do struggle to put it together, which box set did your terrain come in? Because this terrain that I've painted here is the original set of terrain from Into the Dark, right? But other people have struggled with Into the Dark. So I'm wondering whether the problem batches have been eliminated from later printings, and it's just that some percentage of Into the Dark terrain has a flaw, or whether it's all possible iterations of terrain or what. So let me know your experiences in the comments. Tell me what you think of the board in terms of whether you'd be happy to... Well, I don't want to say whether you'd be happy to play on it, because I've seen people play on Coke cans and library books, but I want your honest opinion of how worthwhile it is. Bear in mind, I'm not trying to say this is my best possible painting standard. When I show miniatures, I'm often trying to say it's my best possible painting standard. This is deliberately a rush job. Personally, for me, I think it absolutely hits the mark of the time spent and the expected amount of quality. But if you think it looks hideous, like you're more than welcome to tell me, and I'll take that on board. I'd be really interested. I'm probably not going to change because I'm happy with it, but I'm really interested to know what the consensus is. in terms of how good you think this is compared to what standard you think Terrain should have. Because, the counterpoint to me saying, hey, it's not miniatures, the Terrain's not cheap. It's not actually just a cheap thing that doesn't... You could totally hear an argument that says Terrain deserves love, and by not spending days, weeks, months painting your Terrain intricately and delicately and giving it that real wow factor, you're shortchanging yourself because you're getting less hours of hobby out of something that you've purchased. I totally buy that argument. I have a massive pile of shame, so for me, it's not really a case of wanting to get the maximum number of hours out of something I bought. It's wanting to get something done so I can move on to the next thing and get more stuff done over time. That's my situation. Again, your mileage may vary depending on how long you've been in the hobby, how much disposable income you have to spend on Warhammer and that kind of thing. Right, I've rambled off more than long enough. I hope you've enjoyed the video. A short one today, just 15 minutes, but yeah, I hope it's been helpful to you, and have a great evening. Bye-bye.